seemingly normal looking photos with disturbing backstories. The lightning strike. This first photo from 1975 shows two brothers, Sean and Michael McQuilkin, posing for a picture being taken by their sister. They were climbing Laurel Rock in California's Sequoia National Park when they noticed that their hair started to stand up on end, and this was due to the static electricity in the air. Little did they know that this was a warning sign that something deadly was coming. A few minutes after this photo was taken, they were struck by lightning, and luckily the boys survived, with the younger boy Sean being left with third-degree burns. However, another hiker in the area wasn't as lucky and ended up being killed. They described the strike as a flash of white light as bright as arc welding, the deafening explosion, and the feeling of becoming weightless and being lifted up off the ground. Sean ended up taking his own life in 1989, and Michael continues to spread awareness about the dangers and warning signs of lightning. Next is this normal photo showing a group of people gathering at Niagara Falls, but pay close attention to the woman in the back wearing the red sweater. This is Ayano Tokumasu, an exchange student from Japan who is studying English in Toronto. She'd climbed over the railing and started to straddle it to get a better look at the falls, and when she stood up, the student apparently lost her footing and fell into the river less than 100 feet away from the edge of the falls. The strong current swept her over the falls, where they would later find her lifeless body. This next photo looks like spray paint on a sidewalk, but these dark spots on the stairs are not spray paint. This is a person's nuclear shadow left behind from the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. When the bomb detonated at 1900 feet above the city center, the subsequent explosion caused temperatures of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it annihilated everything within 1600 feet of the bomb's blast zone, and almost anyone or anything within a mile was completely destroyed. The bomb's light and heat were so extreme that they bleached the city's exposed surfaces, except for in places where a person shielded the building or sidewalk from the blast. This is now an exhibition at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. Unit 731. This is a picture of Unit 731, Japan's Biological and Chemical Weapons Division, conducting a bacteriological trial on a test subject in 1940. Unit 731 was trying to weaponize disease that, if fully developed, could have killed everyone on Earth several times over. They were determined to master germ warfare and test the limits of human suffering. Unit 731 conducted a wealth of torturous tests on captured Chinese civilians. This ranged from purposeful frostbite, vivisection on unconscious patients, to weapon testing on live prisoners. Unit 731 was shut down at the end of World War II, but they performed some of the most inhumane experiments in human history. The prayer of the doomed Apollo 1 astronauts. This is a photo of Apollo 1 astronauts praying to a miniature version of their command module. This was supposed to be a lighthearted joke, however, it turned much more deadly. The three men would end up burning to death during a test launch on January 27, 1967. Tragically, the three men had even voiced concerns about the craft's amount of flammable materials to Joseph Shea, manager of the Apollo Spacecraft Program Office. They then took this portrait and presented it to Shea shortly before the fatal accident with a caption that read, "It isn't that we don't trust you, Joe, but this time we've decided to go over your head." Next is Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. This picture was taken of a group of survivors of the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, which crashed into the Andes. They were all smiling and were eventually saved, but what you may have not noticed is the spine to the right of them in the picture. This is because they had to resort to cannibalism in order to survive and ended up eating one of the other survivors. They were stranded for 72 days and eventually 16 survivors were rescued. The wildest part is that they were only 18 miles away from a hotel, but they hiked in a different direction to look for help. This next photo shows Michael Rockefeller surrounded by a tribe circling him on his first trip to New Guinea, where he was studying art. He was the youngest son of New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller and the newest member of a dynasty of millionaires founded by his famous great-grandfather, John D. Rockefeller. On one of his later trips, his boat ended up being capsized and he ended up having to swim 12 miles to shore. And when he washed ashore, he was completely exhausted and weak from swimming for miles after the boat overturned. On shore, he saw a bunch of familiar faces he's seen before, those of the Oshjanep warriors. But instead of the rescue Rockefeller had hoped for, he ended up being stabbed in the ribs by one of the men and was fatally killed and consumed consumed by the warriors. This next photo is a photo that Dalen Pua sent to his grandmother of the Haiku Stairs, but there's much more hiding in the background of this photo. Dalen Pua went and visited his grandmother in Oahu, Hawaii. He had told her he was interested in hiking the Haiku Stairs, otherwise known as the Stairway to Heaven. This hike was closed to the public, and anyone caught hiking it was considered trespassing, and his grandmother warned him against it, saying he would be locked up if he did go hiking. On February 27, 2015, he caught a bus and continued to the Haiku Stairs despite his grandmother's advice. Once he got there, he began to hike the Stairway to Heaven. Dalen started to send texts to his grandmother with photos of him on the hike. However, after sending a few pictures to his grandmother, he would never be seen or heard from again. After his disappearance, the photos were studied closer, and in this picture, if you look closely, you can see a man in the far background that seems to be following behind Dalen. The family has now asked for public assistance and for anyone who recognized the man to come forward, but to this day, his remains have never been found, and what happened to him and the identity of the man in the photo remains a mystery.